What up, everyone? It's your boy Jabril Engineer, and welcome back. Yeah, I'm talking to you, all you STEM enthusiasts, students, mentors, mentees, professors, and the like. Welcome to the STEM Files, the voice of STEM talent in Black culture, where we highlight the best and brightest in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. On tonight's episode, we have part two with our professor, the awesome Kelly Knight, forensic scientist, STEM influencer, educator. Tune in for more of this dynamic episode, Forensic Science in the Call for Justice, after this. Man, that intro never gets old. Again, family, welcome back. We are back. This is the STEM Files, the voice of STEM talent in Black culture. Like I said before, I am your host, Jabril Muhammad, aka Jabril Engineer. I'm a civilian mechanical engineer focusing on naval ship fluid systems with a background in material science and engineering, the study of how the crystalline structures of materials impact their various properties. I'm typically joined by my awesome co-host, Tariq Muhammad, aka Tariq Cardiac, a biomedical research scientist with a background in biomedical pathobiology or cardiopathobiology, which is the study of how diseases form in the heart and other blood vessels. Family, you all know if you've been watching this show for any amount of time that I, in particular, can run my mouth on and on and on and on. So, we always tell you, like always, the show is not about me. It's not about Tariq. It's not about the host. It's about who we bring on to add value to you all's lives, you all's journeys in STEM, and just in personal development. So, without further ado, I'm going to introduce to some and present to all of us again, Professor Kelly Knight, forensic scientist. How you doing, sis?
I am doing wonderful. How are you?
I'm well. I'm going to come down. I'm going to even myself out a little bit. You know what I'm saying? I'm coming in a little hot, but I'm doing great as
I
always.
love
Always excited to do the show. As Tariq always says, family, we call it a show, but it's more than that. This is a live networking session. It feels like the cookout, but with high level information being given. So, make sure to ready your notepads and pens, ready your devices, whatever you take notes on, and whatever you want to ask questions. Drop your questions in the comment section as we move forward. So, without further ado, this is part two. For those of us who were not on the first time Dr. Kelly drops, excuse me, soon to be Dr. Kelly, but Professor Kelly, let me get that right. You know what I'm
that's
saying? You gotta get that right. We on the road to the PhD, but
on
we
the
are
road,
professor. You know what I'm saying? We awesome regardless.
on
You know what I'm saying?
the
We gotta
road.
get that right. Absolutely. She dropped some serious gems on us. But for those who weren't on, Professor, if you wouldn't mind, just give us a little bit of background about yourself and how you got into this.
Yeah, I am a forensic scientist. My bachelor's is in chemistry. I have a master's in forensic science. I worked in a crime lab for a long time before I decided to transition into higher education. So I started doing some adjunct teaching while I was in the crime lab. My specialty is forensic DNA. So I was working in the DNA lab. I was doing some tours for the crime lab, and I started to learn how much I love sharing my science with others by doing these tours of the crime lab. And that's what got me into adjunct teaching. And then once I did adjunct teaching, I did that for about a year. And then I got pregnant with my first son, and we
Mm-hmm.
decided to move closer to family, which meant leaving my crime lab. And that broke my heart because anyone who's in forensic science knows how much work it takes to become a qualified analyst within a specific lab. And that kind of starts over whenever you leave a lab. When you go to a new lab, you kind of have to
Mm,
start that apprenticeship to a certain extent. You have to start it over a little bit. But then
absolutely.
I ended up getting a position with the university to teach full time. It came up. I was really in a place where I was looking for jobs, and anything that came up, whether it was like in a forensic lab or higher education or whatever, I was gonna apply for it. and this position came up with the university, and it was perfect because my position is actually not just being a professor, but I'm also in a role called a STEM accelerator, which means 50% of my job is spent doing things that are very specific to STEM, whether it be recruitment, outreach, retention. And because I was doing a lot of that in the crime lab already, it was almost like the position was made for me. And I literally said that during my interview. And they were like, "Why should we hire you?" I was like, "Well, because you wrote the job description for me. Like, this is
Right.
really a perfect job for me because I can combine, my love for forensic science with my love for STEM and STEM outreach." So that's where I am now. I'm teaching full time. I teach undergraduate and graduate classes in forensic science, and I run a program for girls of color, grades 6 through 12, STEM outreach program. And then I'm also getting my PhD in science education research. So busy. I'm busy.
Mm, and that's an understatement. Family, we about to get into it. Again, Professor Kelly, thank you so much for coming back on. And the first time we talked about, well, what is forensic science, and is it the same as what you might see in Bones or CSI? How is it different? Is it better? Is it worse? So, but we really want to focus on today's theme, and it's very important to both me and Tariq: forensic science and the call for justice. Over this past year and really throughout our sojourn here in America as Black people, we have struggled to and really still haven't really gotten that just due and justice. So when you think about forensic science as a discipline, and you think about the crossroads when it comes into social justice, criminal justice, what about it really allows for, if dealt with properly, for justice to be served and justice to really reach victims? What really want to unpack and eat that out for our audience today?
Right. So I think the one thing people need to really remember when they think about forensic science, um, it's different from, when you think about like prosecutors and defense attorneys and people who tend to be considered one way or
Right,
biased when it comes
right.
to who they're advocating for. So, like the prosecution in the state is going to be, advocating for their side of things. The defense is going to be advocating for their side of things. And the forensic scientist role is really to be the complete unbiased party in it all. We're not
Mhm.
supposed to be the ones to see one side or the other. And I think that can be misconstrued a lot because I say, unfortunately, a lot of forensic labs are kind of under the umbrella of law enforcement. Uh,
Mhm.
so the public perception is that we work for the police and therefore we work for the prosecution and the state. And so
Mm.
we're doing things that they want us to do. And
Right.
and that's really not how it works. And I think forensic science as a field is starting to recognize more and more that perceived bias. And so there has been a call for us to kind of decentralize from law enforcement and kind of, place ourselves as like a more independent entity. And
Mm.
there are some jurisdictions that have done that already. So, like, for example, the state of Virginia operates independently of law enforcement. They have their own like centralized state system. And I think more locations are going to try to do that. But I think the important thing is just to, for forensic scientists to remember and to be constantly trained and have this thought embedded that you are the unbiased party. And so when you see a piece of evidence, regardless of the narrative that came with,
Right.
regardless of the individuals who you think may be involved. So, like, as a forensic scientist, I get all the details. I get the names, I get the narratives, I see all of that. And I would, it would be untrue to say that there probably aren't forensic scientists who look at those things and it influences their analyses. And that's not how it should be. I'm not going to say that happens a lot, but I'm
Right.
sure there are some people who may see something and it kind of, even if it's unconscious, affects them. And so I think,
Absolutely.
that training, that unconscious bias training, and doing as much as we can to anonymize the evidence so that we don't know what happened or who's involved, so we can really just focus on the science. I think that's the most important part of our role within social justice, because we want to make sure that everybody is receiving the exact same treatment, the exact same testing, the exact same unbiased approach as the other person.
Mm. That I love that dynamic that you just brought in because as an engineer, right, I took an engineering ethics course when I was at Penn for undergrad, and one of the stories or case studies, if you will, that stuck out to me was when we were talking about the Challenger space shuttle incident when it crashed or exploded going up into orbit, and basically one of the key or cruxes of that story or or that study rather is that there was a disagreement between the engineers and the, I guess, managers or those looking at the monetary side of things. Like, oh well, there's this O-ring issue, right? Where at a certain temperature they may grow brittle, but hey, it's like, okay, we got to stay on schedule. Nothing's wrong. We're good to go. Move forward. So when you talked about being unbiased and utilizing and staying true to that oath, I think about doctors and the Hippocratic oath and all those things. It's like, okay, I've received a certain education, a certain schooling, and I have a duty to my fellow man to do my best to
Right.
deliver a quality expertise for the
Hmm.
good of humanity. That concept really, if if understood and properly handled, should hand out justice. And I think having that separation as a understanding and also something physical is very key going forward so that things aren't corrupted. And I would ask a follow-up question to you. How do you manage, and I don't know obviously what cases you worked on, but being a black woman, being an individual with a conscience in that type of arena, how do you manage your feelings personal toward certain things, events, and constructs when you're in the lab and trying to keep within the bounds of that oath you've taken, to do good science.
Right. Yeah, it is very difficult, um, because you are human.
Right.
And I think, as important as it is to remain unbiased, I think it's also important to keep our humanity as forensic scientists and remember that these are people's lives that we're dealing with, and that you may be holding pieces of the worst day of someone's life in your hands. And I treat every case as if it were someone I knew. Like, how, if it were my family member, what would I want the scientist working in my case to do? You don't want it to become so mundane where it's just like, oh, day in, day out, let me just process this homicide and get it out of here. Like, you want to remember
Mm,
that this is heavy stuff. And so even though I feel the feelings and I ensure my, being impartial and keep my unbiased approach, I don't punish myself for feeling the feelings, because it's a reminder that I'm still human and that I'm going to give this case my best effort. One thing I didn't learn about until after I left the crime lab was there is actually something that forensic scientists suffer from that has not really been talked about a lot, but it's called vicarious trauma. And
mm,
basically, what is happening is that forensic scientists, I think, because we aren't generally, unless you're like a crime scene investigator, um, you're not really generally on the front line, or you're not experiencing the trauma yourself, I should say. So even crime scene investigators may feel these things. You're not experiencing the trauma itself, but because you were there and you've become a part of it, you're almost experiencing the side effects as if the trauma did happen to you. And I don't
Mm,
think a lot of people even process that that was a thing. That, like, if you are like, I know for me, the cases that killed me were like the ones, like the most vulnerable victims, like kids, babies, people who were disabled, elderly. I mean, all of the cases are awful, but those were the ones where you think, God, these people probably didn't even, like, they couldn't even process mentally what was happening to them and how heartbreaking that is. And I think, now that I'm not working actively with casework anymore, I'm more so on the research side of things. And I look back on that, I can see how it did have kind of an impact on my mental health, and how even now to this day it has affected me, like with parenting. Like, I have young children, and whenever someone asks like if my kids can come spend the night, I'm like, no, because I work too many rape cases where, you know,
uh-oh. Are you, Kelly, you there? Kelly, family, we are experiencing some technical
big sister
difficulties.
had, can you hear me? I'm back. Okay,
You
good.
back. Hold on. Go ahead. Go ahead. We lost you for a quick for about 30 seconds.
Okay, good. So now I was just saying, when my kids go to spend the night, I think about those cases that I work where, kid went to spend the night at the friend's house and the parents were great, but maybe they had friends over, or a relative there
Mm,
or whatever, that then ended up doing something to that child, and that stuck with me. Or even when, my son is like, can I go outside and play? And I'm thinking about, the kid that got kidnapped or whatever. And so it definitely has stuck with me. And I think probably for the rest of my life, I will always kind of see life through this pessimistic lens, is what my husband
mm,
says. He's like, you are so negative. I'm like, well, when you live like a career where your whole life is centered around crime, it's
right.
kind of hard to, like, separate yourself from that. But yeah, it's a lot. I mean, I think now that labs and are starting to recognize this more, that it's something that forensic scientists are dealing with. I think they're being more proactive about trying to step in and provide support. But I will say this, my lab was awesome at keeping up employee morale. They were really good about that. And I didn't even process until after the fact that that might have been one of the reasons why they were so adamant about doing things that kept up the morale in the lab, because we were working with such heavy stuff. And
Right.
I don't know if that was purposeful on their end, but I know for me, like, it meant a lot to be, working these hard cases in the morning, and then come in to the work area at lunch, and we were able to celebrate somebody's birthday with cupcakes, or whatever. I mean, little stuff like that that just kind of changed the mood for sure.
Absolutely. So what I'm hearing as you're talking is very important. So family, for those of us watching, right? High intensity environment, right? High leverage situation where you don't want to shun the effects or the varied situations or aspects of the situation. Respect the science, respect the people, respect the situation itself, and respect your expertise, right? So you come into the situation, it's like, okay, I could be the difference between a mother, a brother, an aunt, an uncle, an organization sleeping a bit better at night, or not that they won't live with this forever, but having some semblance of serenity, some semblance of calm, knowing that, you know what, whoever did this will get their just due. And not that I'll put it away, whatever that just due is based on the law, it's going to occur. So you being that
Right.
forensic scientist and having that lens through which you can go and see this is what
Hmm.
actually happened. And it's not that, okay, because I'm feeling these feelings, I'm going to skew this or move this to the side. It's no, I have these feelings, so those feelings will project or translate to me doing the best job I can. And
Absolutely.
that's the thought process we want to have. So definitely thank you for that. And I hope that this is kind of putting on all of us as professionals, whatever you do, come and give it 110%, right?
Mhm.
You're trained in some way or another, right? Whether it's social media, right? Whether it's forensic science, whether it's business, whatever it is, it's like you come to do a job, you come to give an end product or service, and people expect that you're going to do your very best within those confines. So thank you so much for Prof for giving us that. I want to talk about COVID and why. Yes, COVID is a current event. Yes, many people have died. Yes, a pandemic, but there has been a lot of talk surrounding education and its impact on the teacher, its impact on the student, its impact on the families, impact on the community. Being a professor in this COVID environment, in this virtual environment for the past 12 plus, 15 plus months, talk to us about challenges, successes, lessons learned. Who are you now as a professor versus who you were then before this as a professor?
Yeah, so I mean, I have always liked being really interactive in my classes. I like to engage with the students. I like to have discussions with them. I like to incorporate hands on activities with my students because I think in STEM are really important. And I really had to completely transition uh, my pedagogy from last spring to fall and really think about what I think more deeply, I should say, because I've always thought about this, but I had to think more deeply about what I really wanted my students to get out of the class. Because I remember the biggest thing that professors were panicking about when we transitioned in the spring was testing because
Mm,
everyone was panicking about how they were going to test students now they were at home because were they going to cheat, are they going to use a lockdown browser, blah blah blah, all these other things. So I made probably a controversial decision. Most professors probably wouldn't agree with, well, I shouldn't say most, but I would say there's probably a lot of professors who would disagree with what I decided to do. And that was to completely take exams out of my classes. And there were a
wow.
couple of reasons. One is because I was more concerned, especially in the fall, I was more concerned
Mm,
about my students' mental health and
right.
their well-being than me trying to figure out how I'm going to test you. Because in reality, we know that exams are not really super effective in determining how much someone actually knows about a subject. It really just shows that they, a lot of times are good test takers. They know how to study, they know how to memorize, but
Right,
it
right.
doesn't always show that they know how to actually apply it. And so that's really how I shift my thinking. I shifted it to think more deeply about how can I help the students to learn and retain the information, but also demonstrate that they can apply it without having to use exams.
Right.
Because I mean, I was not going to stress myself out over whether students were cheating or not. I just was not going to do that because I just it was just too much. Like at the end of the
Pick your
day, students
battles. Got to pick your
are really
battles.
yeah, I mean, I saw this one meme where this student had like the answers taped up all the way around their computer. I mean, it's like, what's the point? Like, if they really want to cheat, regardless, They're gonna figure
They're
out a
going to
way.
do it. They're going to
Right.
figure it out. Right.
And at the end of the day, those students are going to be the ones that are cheating themselves, and they're not going to get far in their career. So I'm not going to stress myself out about that. So what I did was I decided to switch to portfolios. And that was a really difficult switch because being a STEM educator, that's something really difficult to show. How can someone demonstrate through like a portfolio, handwritten, um, project based uh, method? How can they show that they learned through that? So I had to
Right.
think through that, and that was really hard because I really switched. I switched everything. Like I did do the pre-recorded videos for my students. I did like mini lectures, but I focused more on how are you going to apply the learning. So like we had like the Zoom journal discussions. I had them do a
Right.
science communication entry. So some of them even chose to create like entries for Instagram or whatever. Um, some students created lesson modules and songs. And I mean, they just really had the freedom to do. I had students create podcasts and websites. I mean, it was just amazing to me to
Shout out
see.
podcast.
Yes, I mean, it was amazing to see how much these students flourished when they had the ability to translate the information they learned in the way that they learn. And to me,
Right.
I'm a huge advocate for culturally relevant and responsive teaching. And that's one way that you do it. You give students the flexibility to choose different ways to demonstrate that they have learned the material. And I had a lot of students, tell me that it was super helpful for them that, not having the stress of exams allowed them to really dig deeper into topics that they were really interested in. Because let's be real, my classes are not electives, they are required. And so I get
Absolutely.
a lot of students who may not be interested in forensic DNA. And so at the end of the day, I want them to take something from the class. I don't want to
Right.
force feed them with information that I want them to know. I want them to have the flexibility to choose something that is of interest to them and run with that, because that's going to be what they're going to remember, and that's how they're going to retain the information. And I think approaching it from that way really helped a lot of students who hated DNA and hated biology to really approach the information in a way that would be more beneficial to them. So, I mean, I feel like it worked pretty well. The transitioning to the fall was really, really hard because I really had to switch. I mean, I had to create like the course from brand new. I mean, that was tough. But then in the spring, it was much easier because I kind of had already created all of the content that I was posting online, and I had a lot of great feedback from my students in the fall. And so I think, the biggest thing I've learned from last spring to this spring is, for one thing, it's okay to break out of the norm. Like like teachers don't have to feel like they're stuck in this box of
Right.
exams. Like there's other ways to test students' knowledge. And so I think that was a big shift to me. And also, I've always been trying to pull back from like the let me lecture mode, and switch more into an active learning classroom. And this
Right.
really forced me to do it. I was doing it bit by bit, but this really forced me to be like, all right, we're not doing any lecturing when we're together. Like, that's not, we're going to make the most of our time. I'm going to give you content to learn on your own. And then we're going to actually talk about it, apply it, and do all of that when we get together, like via Zoom. So I'm taking that back with me when we go back into the classroom. I'm going to really keep the same format I was doing, in that, and this is called a flipped classroom, in that they're doing a lot of outside work before they come into the classroom, so that when they come into the classroom, we can have a more meaningful class experience. Instead of me just lecturing at you during the class, we can talk
Right.
more deeply in terms of application and case studies and problems so that you can really understand it instead of just wasting the class time listening to me. So yeah, lots of switches.
Mm. That was great. So many points I want to touch on with that. But I do want to highlight this. We are at the halfway point of the show. Family, you are of course watching the STEM Files, the voice of STEM talent in Black culture. It's every Thursday and Saturday at 8 p.m. Jabril engineer Tariq Cardiac. Make sure you follow us and tap in with us at all of our social media. The STEM Files on Facebook, the STEM Files on YouTube, at the STEM Files on Instagram, and at the STEM Files on Twitter. We are growing our platform. We thank you for all your support, your continued support as we continue to give you the best. I'm gonna go out and say the best STEM content on the internet. I'm just going to go out there and say that. Now that's a bold statement, but look, if you don't believe in yourself, nobody's going to respect your swag. So I'm throwing it
Right,
out there. I'm
right.
talking my stuff.
That's right.
Um, so I heard a few themes. You talked about being faced with a crossroads, to test or not to test. That is the question. And you chose, not to test. And you talked about applied learning. One of the things that you mentioned, students, they know how to study, they know how to take tests. A lot of times, and I was having this conversation on one of our previous shows, me and Tariq were talking about, or you know what, it was an unrelated conversation. It's like some students learn their professors. They learn their teachers and understand, okay, I know how Professor Knight, does this thing. She's gonna hit me with one of these, one of pop, 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 pop. So if I
Yep.
learn these questions or I learn this open-ended, I'm Gucci. Versus, you know what? You're a visual learner. You're an audio learner. You learn by doing. How can I engage all those levels of learning, that lamellar structure, if you will, and
Mhm.
really get as many students as possible to benefit holistically from this course in teaching? So now, as they go and they pursue this high level education, the graduate level, PhD level, what have you, they are able to think critically and actually problem solve beyond a test. They understand that they're more than a number,
Right.
a percentage on a test, but they are a skill set, a series of
Mhm.
skill sets that they can then apply to whatever the end result is, whether it be a job, research, or what have you. So definitely
Yeah.
thank you so much. That was amazing, and we definitely want to make sure that everybody takes what they need to take from that. So we talked about teaching, right? We talked about this concept of social justice and forensic science. I want to talk a bit about social media, right? And one of the things that I find interesting, we're in a added value or value added society today where it's like most people, young people, they're looking at the traditional route to quote unquote success. Like, okay, I can go to school, get good grades, go to college, get grades, get a good job, I'll be set. Eh, eh, okay. Is that education? Is that schooling? Are those things one and the same? What have you? It's like, you know what? What value do I have? What skill sets can I learn to secure myself, my family, my community, and really create a legacy? So I want to talk to you about social media because so much value is given, and so many people have laid a framework for how to not just grow on social media, but really make a substantive statement and progress on there. So, speaking as a STEM influencer, what about that uh, framework in social media is distinct and different? And how have you capitalized as you continue to build your platform?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, the most important thing has just been to remain authentic and to
Say that
share.
again. Mm, come on.
Because there's so many. If you watch the people who talk about like focusing on growing, and what I feel like for me, what I've done is I've just tried to stay as authentic as possible um to what's important to me, and to share it in a way that's real. shared in a way that shows the good and the bad. Um,
Mm,
and and that's not to say that people have to do like there's for me, I think people just have to remember there's no one right way to do it. Like there's a million people on social media telling you like this is what you need to do this and do that. Um, I think that everybody is entitled to to do social media the way they want to do it and do it in a way that makes you happy. And I think the right people who want to be in that environment will come. And that's really
mm,
been my focus is because like they're like, well, you need to niche down and you need to do this, and the algorithm wants this, and I'm like, look,
right. Woo! Let's talk about the algorithm.
Lord,
Oh my God.
look, I'm
Oh,
not doing
I'm.
it. I'm not doing all that. What I'm gonna do is, I've been pretty clear about the things that the things that interest me. Forensic science, STEM outreach, getting my PhD, being a Black woman in STEM, and those experiences. And the reality is, my audience is really variable. It's a lot of different people, and because of that, because I don't niche down, I probably don't get the number of likes or the number of followers that I could if I really focused like just on PhD stuff or just on forensic science. Because the reality is, I have so many people following me for so many different things. Like if
Right.
I post about forensic science, well, there may only be like 1/8 of my followers who are there because I'm a forensic scientist. There may be a lot of other people who are there for other reasons. And, I've gone back and forth with this whole, well, do I just post what people want me to post or do I just, and I'm like, no, I started this page because I wanted to share my science and my life and my authentic self and all of it because I'm not a monolith. I love my science, but there's so many other things that make me me. And I feel like for for my particular mission and what's important to me at the end of the day is for people to understand really that you don't have to just be in a box. You can be all the things, and that's okay. And that may mean that I don't have 100,000 followers or whatever, and that's okay because I'm not here for the followers. I'm here because I think if I were a young Kelly on social media, Instagram was not around when I was in school, but I think I would have loved to see a woman who showed me that I didn't have to look and act one specific way to be a scientist, that I could be a scientist and a mom and, do all the things and that's fine. So, being on social media has been interesting. I enjoy it. I love the community I've built. I love, the connections I've made. But yeah, at the end of the day, it just comes down to authenticity and realness for me. Sometimes I almost feel like I get a little too real, and I'm not gonna lie, I will delete a post sometimes because I'm like, ooh, okay, I did too much right there. Like I
Hold
am
on. Hold
that.
on. Kelly from around the way came out on this one. Let me hold on. Let me bring this. Let me bring this back.
Right.
Hold
So
on.
I'm like, wait a minute, this page is
Uh,
public. So let me just reel that back. Reel
right.
that
Hold on.
I have
Hold on.
students who follow me. And
Dang.
so, and it's that, again, it's that fine line between like, as a student, I would have loved to see a professor who was real. Like, you're like, people think that professors are like up on this pedestal and they're always right and they're always in their suits and perfect and blah, blah, blah. And I think that sends such a bad message because they're
Mm.
not always right and they're not perfect and we don't know stuff. Sometimes I still have to do calculations on Google on the calculator. I mean,
Talk.
we're,
Talk.
we're real. And I
I
think
tutor
that,
in math and I still be like some
right,
you know what I'm saying?
two
I still be
times five.
right.
Okay.
Right.
Just want to
Right.
double
Come
check. So,
on. Yeah.
I struggle with that sometimes between, especially as a Black woman in STEM, because we struggle with maintaining, quote unquote, authority in the classroom. It's already difficult enough when they see us. Some students automatically want to question you. They want to question why you're there. You're not, you don't look like a professor. You don't sound like a professor, blah, blah, blah. And so I remember when I first started, I was really like, bun back, glasses on, three-piece suit, like, hard ass coming in, like being really like, strict. And then, just so I could gain some respect. And I realized I was like, that's whack. Like I was like, I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna be my authentic self. And you can either respect that, or you maybe you don't, but that's your problem. You're going to respect me in the classroom though, or we're going to have a side conversation. But I'm not going to try to pretend to be something that I'm not. And that's not to say I don't love throwing on a suit and a bun. I do, but I just still feel like, I'm going to be my real self in the classroom. And there are consequences to that. There are times where I have to, you know, pull a student to the side because they got a little too friendly. And I'm like, now look, just because I got chill, I'm not your homegirl. So let's get that straight. So we gotta kind of talk about that for a second. But I think students have told me time and time again that they respect my authenticity, and it makes them feel comfortable to talk to me. And that's one of those undue burdens of being the black woman in STEM. I get all the people in my office all the time. The real, the chill professor. I have people coming in and out of my office all the time because they feel like I'm more approachable and they can talk. And I love that. I love that so much, but it does, there's consequences to that too. Cause then you're like, all right, y'all, I got to get some work done.
Right.
Let me close my door.
Right. We can have a pizza party another day. Like I really got a job. Like I got a whole job.
Exactly. I used to have students who used to literally say, "Can I just come in your office and sit?" Because I always had like a chill. I miss my office so much on campus, but I always had like a chill vibe. Like I had like the mood lights and the nice calm decor, and I would always have like the smooth R&B playing in the background, and students would love to just come in to just like chill, like to get themselves together. So I do miss that on campus, but yeah, it's good times. Good times.
That's as you're talking, man, it took me back. Like, so I used to teach. I did a long-term substitute teaching position for 7th to 8th grade math and science at a bilingual school. And Tony, listen, I'm gonna tell you know where I'm going. All right, you know where I'm going. So at this, I'm 27 now, right? Now this was in like 2015, 2016. So I'm what is it 2021? So it's like 5 or so years ago. So now I'm 22, maybe 23. So I'm younger, right? So I'm real fresh face, baby face now. You got that right about to go to high school. Now, I have to admit that I initially did not set up that proper like they knew I was the teacher, but I was like real cool. Like, I know the same songs. I like anime. I do martial arts. I dance. So like you coming in, oh Mr. Muhammad, sing something for it. Mr. Muhammad, da, da, da. And it's just like, and so I'm like, okay, I got to set this right. And then when you mentioned the whole concept of the friendliness too, like understanding that, especially young women at that age are maturing. So now you getting fist bumps, you getting a little side because you can't. Oh my God, Mr. Muhammad! Well, hold on, because you gotta wait. You gotta wait. You gotta wait. You gotta hold on. You gotta hold on. Because I'm like, I mess around. So keeping that professionalism, but also staying fresh, staying engaging was a balance that I had to learn. I'm thankful for that opportunity because I know I could, if I desire to be a good teacher, to be a teacher, but having that understanding, I have to maintain teacher-student
Mhm.
relationship. I'm not your friend. We can talk about things like, oh, like who will win, Goku or Naruto. Like we can do that. We can
Right,
talk about that. But at the same
right.
time, in the classroom, we're going to have that. So I appreciate you for saying that. Absolutely. Man,
Gotta
this
have those boundaries.
absolutely gotta have it, and I learned that lesson. I wouldn't even say the hard way, but I learned that lesson
Right.
definitely. Oh man. Um, you know, you talk authenticity. I really want to unpack that. Going back to actually social media. I try to tell everyone social media has become and really has always been a means to an end. It's
Mhm.
just you just may have a different final destination than somebody else. It's like,
Mm,
okay, if I get on social media and my end destination is that I just want to live my best life, that's what I'm going to do. If I'm going
right,
to try to become this awesome influencer public figure, there's an algorithm for that. If I'm
right.
going to try to create this community and get sales, there's an algorithm for that. So I
Right.
think what we have to especially as young people, is when we're looking at people, we have to understand the context by which they're on social media. Yes, there
Mhm.
are core algorithms for general growth that everybody can abide by, but the pressure to feel like just because, and this is a very real thing, the different platforms are catering more to influencers that you have to become one,
Mhm.
has to be kind of debunked. Like,
Mhm.
social media was created to do just that, be a social media to connect with people, da da da. Da. And now people have been able to monetize and grow a network, create a community. So just know what you come to play for,
Right.
and then play your game. Don't play
Yep.
somebody else's game. Play yours.
Exactly.
So I definitely appreciate that as well, man.
Exactly.
So we are approaching the final 10 minutes. And as promised, and for everyone watching, thank y'all so much. Y'all been an awesome audience. I appreciate all the engagement. We want to flip the table, if you will. So we've been doing something new where we've given our guest an opportunity to play interviewer, not even play, but actually be an interviewer and ask us, me and or Tariq, questions. And it could be anything about our platform, science related, about what we do on a day to day, background, or what have you. So I want to now give you the opportunity, Professor Knight, to ask any questions, and you have the floor.
Let me get my microphone. I've always wanted to do this. No, I'm just playing.
Absolutely.
It's my lip gloss.
She yeah, she
Let's
ready.
talk Oprah for a moment. So tell me. No. All right. So let's see. So you're a civil engineer, right?
I am a mechanical engineer. I'm working
Mechanical.
as a mechanical. Yep.
So if you could do one job other than being a mechanical engineer, what would you do? What would be your next job that you would do?
Oh, okay. So I'm getting paid. I'm getting paid to do this, and it's anything else. Oh my! So it's a tie. It's like a tie. So if I could, if I could get paid to just talk, no, like for real. So I and when I say talk, like to do kind of what I'm doing here, but specifically with young people, I could talk to young people and mentor and have courageous conversations all day.
Mm-hmm.
I could do that all day. Whether it's imparting on someone to try to bring them up, kind of having a roundtable discussion. I legitimately love to engage and have high frequency conversation. The other thing I would do, and this is because if I had all the time in the world, I'd be doing it. I'd be a dancer. I would.
Really? Oh, I love
Li- no,
dancing too.
for listen. So it's on my bucket list. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I have to. I I need to be. So my favorite artist, not of all time, but low key, is Chris Brown. So, and
Yeah.
I really would love to be in a Chris Brown video. Like I would take off so much time from work if that opportunity came up. I'm like, all right, how much leave I got built up? Bet I need 2 months. I need 2 months. I'm gonna be out of here. No, for real. So if I could be if I could dance, or if I could literally mentor and kind of working cross functional teams full time, one or the other. I'd be happy.
That is cool. Yeah, I before I had my second son, I taught Zumba for over 10 years. So I I love fitness and dance too. I actually did dance for a professional Latin dance company while I was in grad school. So
Oh,
I
that's
feel you.
what's up.
Yeah, I love dancing too. That's like my release.
Yeah,
Cool beans.
absolutely. I
Oh,
danced
really
in high school and in college. Yep.
nice. That's exciting.
hmm
That's a fun release. All right, so let's see. So tell me, what's next for the STEM files? What do you all have in your sleeves? I know you guys do all these wonderful interviews. So what else
Right.
do you do, or what do you have coming up in the future?
So that's a great question. So we're definitely going to continue to have the standard for the interviews, and we're going to be up in the ante. We're going to have some. I'm gonna say a couple things. I'm gonna keep a couple things on the low. But I'm gonna say a couple things. So we're gonna have for our loyal fans, you know what I'm saying, we're going to have some, some shirts and things, some swag. So if you want to really
Nice.
show that rock with the STEM files, we'll be doing that. We're going to up the ante a bit more on the technical output. We already do a great job, like you said, with the editing of the graphics and stuff, but we want to, get even better quality. So we're going to be getting some things technically. We're going to be getting some exclusive content too. So for those people who really rock with us and behind the scenes stuff, some alternative, online content we'll be showing as well. But one of the biggest things we want to continue to do and do even better is translate the connections from the show to um, to partnerships on a number of levels. So, like for example, different business owners, whether you are a forensic scientist, you are a influencer, an engineer, what have you. Working with our parent company, Original Man Scientific, for things like inventions, courses, right? Community development. We want to be a product of the product. We say this is a real live networking session. Well, we want to be the people leading the charge on that, to show people that we should do our best to work with everybody that we've had on the show in a greater capacity than we've already shared them with you. So those are a few things coming down the pipeline. We're excited, and we want everybody to stay tuned because y'all thought the STEM files was split. Now, we got some things down the pike. So
Nice. Nice. All right, so let's see. So what would you say was the most difficult course you ever took in college?
ah ah ah. So oh my god.
I know what it is for me. It would definitely be OChem.
So they were all hard. like
I
no
can see that.
no okay, so okay. So I went so 2011, 2015, I went to University of Pennsylvania. I studied material science and engineering. If I had to just literally say like the actual hardest class, like oh, I'm trying to like for real, like the actual hardest class. Cause like mm, get, I, mm, okay, okay. I think mm, no, cause I'm like in between two. Give me a second. Give me a second. I'm between two. Cause this is hard. This is tough. This is tough. Okay, I think one of them is definitely but between like Calc 3, Calc 4. Those
Woo!
are those, it's like I say Calc 4. People are like, you took and then there's a Calc 4. Like that's
Right. I'm like, wait
like,
a minute. They got that
like
many?
like yeah, because then you got differential equations and all that stuff. You got all that stuff. So
Yeah.
Calc 3, Calc 4, and I think one of my engineering courses, it was engineering at the nanoscale. That was tough because that was part lab, part actual lecture. That was a tough class, you know. But generally speaking, like engineering school is tough. It's like when you go to school for mechanical engineering, like everybody says the same course. Like my brother, it's like statics or dynamics. That's what they all say. Like it's one or the other. But for me, material science, I would say like between that last level calculus and and those nanoscale engineering or the crystalline structures class I took. So I think I'm gonna say that. I'm gonna say that.
Those all sound awful to me. Oh my God. I had to take 2 semesters of calculus. Well, actually, I ended up having to take 3 because I switched from biology to chemistry, and I had taken the lower level calculus when I was a biology major. And then when I switched to chemistry, I was like, "Come on now!" They were like, "Sorry, you took
Right.
the calculus," so I had to take 2 more semesters. And by that second one, I was done. I was like, "All right, this is it. Like, get me out of here! Get me out of here!" All right. So if you could give your younger self one piece of advice, what would you tell your younger self at any age, either in college or maybe your young self?
You don't have time. You don't have time.
Mm,
Don't procrastinate. And I would tell myself that from wherever you're talking about to now, because for several reasons at different times, I still do it. You know,
mm,
I have time. I may think I can't do it. It may be too complex at the onset, just looking at it. So I'm like, I might think, okay, this is difficult. Let me just put it off for a minute. Just
mm-hmm.
don't
All right.
wait. I saw a post on Facebook. And I'm paraphrasing. It was like when you procrastinate, it's like you assuming that like God is just going to continue to give you time for something He's already like asked you to do, something like that. And
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not saying it perfectly, but that's what I would say. I
Mm-hmm.
would say you don't have time, right? And remember why you're here. Those are the two things I would say.
That's good.
Hmm.
That's good. Yeah, I think that's really important. Remembering why you started
Yep.
something. I think for me, being on my PhD journey right now, that's been really important for me to always come back to my why, because in the back of my head, I'm like, I do not need a PhD. I'm already a professor. I'm already like, you know, in a well-established career. And so I have these moments where I'm like, I'm about to quit. Like I do not need to, like I'm giving myself undue stress. But
Right.
then I have to remember, like I literally had to write it down. Like this is why you're doing this. Like we need
Right.
to see more Black women in administration at the higher education level. And until I get that PhD, I'm going to be stuck right where I am. And I need to be higher up. I have
Hmm.
to get, I really don't even want to, but I have to. It's almost like my mission. Like I have to, because I know that, Black women in higher ed up top, like that's needed. So I got to get there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like I'm telling you, like as a young man, black woman walking into a class, man, you see auntie or uncle in the thing, like okay, and it's not that it's out of respect. It's like oh, like you might have some semblance of relief, or just you
Mhm.
have a point that you can identify with, and it's not that you're
Exactly.
gonna try to walk all over the professor. It's just
Right. You
like
can
okay,
sigh of relief. And you know what?
right,
I've even experienced that with, I haven't had a Black faculty member yet in my PhD program. But for any allies listening out there, I had a professor last semester, a white man, and I came into class and he had on a t shirt that said, "This teacher believes Black Lives Matter." And when
mm,
I saw him with that on, it was almost like I could breathe. Like I was like, I was like, okay, I know where you stand now. Like I feel safe. Like I felt safe in that class because I knew even for him to just wear a shirt like that was major. Because there's Black people who won't wear shirts that say Black Lives Matter. So I know for him to wear that, I really respected him, and I felt it made me feel like I was in a safe space. So I was like,
mm.
thank you for that. Thank you for, being brave, because that definitely takes some bravery. I
Absolutely.
appreciate it. So,
So, like I said, the floor is still yours. Anything else you'd like to know or discuss before we close out?
what's your favorite food?
All
Real
right,
dude.
so I'm a, no, so and I'm gonna be honest, because if my wife is watching, she gonna be watching for if I lie. So my favorite food is pizza. That is my favorite food. I am a Ninja Turtle through and through. Like, give me a good cheese slice. Maybe hit up some peppers and onions, some black olives, maybe a
Mm,
little Sicilian. Give me the buttery crust, not too doughy. I'm saying let that thing. I gotta hear that thing sing when I that crispness of that crust. Come on, man.
yeah.
Sing to me a little bit when it, when I bite into it. So my favorite food is definitely pizza. Low key, high key.
We're pizza lovers in my house too. For I forget whose birthday it was recently, but we instead of getting cake, we just got a big pizza and stuck candles in it because
I'm coming
we
over.
pizza that
Invite
we
me next time.
really cake.
Send me the
So
invite.
yeah, yeah, we were like, the reality is if we buy cake, it's just gonna sit here. But we know the pizza, like the cake would have just been for show because we don't really eat cake like that, but we'll tear up some pizza. So we're
Yeah.
like, just put the candles right in the pizza. Perfect.
hmm mm
That's
Well,
it.
thank you so much, Professor. It's fun. You. I would say you've taken to the interviewing part the best, I would say, out of all of our guests. So I appreciate it because you got so many questions in and they were really good ones. So thank
Good.
you so much.
Good.
Family, again, thank you for tuning in always. This is the STEM Files, the voice of STEM talent in Black culture, where we highlight the best and brightest in science, technology, engineering, mathematics. Professor Knight, where can people contact you or to learn more about you? And is there anything that you'd like to leave the audience with before you go?
Well, thank you for having me. As always, this was a good time. The best place to find me is on Instagram. I'm most active on there. There it is, at Kelly the Scientist. I talk about all the things I just talked about tonight. I have a variety of content. Whatever I'm feeling like that day is going up. So yeah, Instagram's really, really the best. Nothing really new going on here. I'm doing some consulting here and there. I'm doing some science education consulting, some forensic consulting. So if you need any outreach help, certain outreach programs, hit me up. I run outreach programs in the summer. I've been doing this for years. So happy to help anybody with that kind of stuff. If you got questions about forensic science, PhD life, hit me up.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. So with that, um, I'll say one if there's one quote or just one phrase that sticks with you as you're moving forward into the next part of your life, what would that be?
Keep pushing. That's it.
Mm,
That's what I just keep telling myself. Keep pushing. Whatever it is, just keep pushing. Someone needs you out there.
absolutely. No matter how many followers you have, how at your work, whether you feel like you're at your worst day, not as successful as you could be,
Mm-hmm.
somebody is watching you.
Right. Oh,
you
that
are
one
you are making
person.
yes, you are
Mhm.
making somebody's day. You could be the reason, and without knowing it, if somebody commits suicide.
Yep.
That is very real. So never give up on yourself. Show up. Incremental growth. Just move forward, one step in front of the other, and stop comparing yourselves.
That's
Oh no, wait,
right.
no, what? Stop. I'm
Say it
gonna say
your
this.
way.
I'm gonna say it again. Let us stop comparing ourselves. If you want to compare yourself to who you were yesterday. If you better,
That's right.
all praise is due to Allah, right? If you're better, that's who you gotta be. It's not like what I'm doing comparing myself to Kelly. I'm not a forensic scientist. I'm not Kelly. You know what I'm saying? I'm not doing what Kelly doing. So
Exactly.
I'm a clap for Kelly. You know what I'm saying? Because when Kelly get the dub, I got the dub. And Kelly not Jabril. Kelly
That's
not as
right.
funny as me. No, I'm sorry. But Kelly gonna clap for me when I do my thing. So
That's
that's what we
right.
gonna do, family. So
That's
with
right.
that,
Support
thank
each
y'all
other.
so much. Absolutely. Keep tuning in. Thank you again, Kelly. Until next time, Jabril engineer, Kelly Knight, forensic scientist. This has been the STEM Files. Love y'all.